everything you do. Compete on the practice field, compete in the weight room, compete in the classroom, compete in everything.
We need to win the drill, win explosive, move forward. So I hope
compete in every single aspect of your life.
Here's what's great about college football this year.
40, 20, 15, 10.
a lot of time. Runs out of time, and down he goes. Touchdown!
Penn State, 93 yards.
Unrivaled, the official podcast of Penn State football.
Welcome into the Unrivaled Podcast, the official podcast of Penn State football. For the first time, we're going to jump outside of the program and get some expert analysis on this upcoming season. And what better way to do so than to welcome in three of the best from the Big Ten Network, from left to right, Dave Refson, Jerry DiNardo, and Howard Griffith. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
First of all, you said expert.
Yeah, I didn't know you'd brought in experts.
Who
They're coming
are
after
they?
us.
We're anxious to hear them. See what they have to say.
Yeah, maybe you have them on. We'll take notes, and then we'll talk to you afterward.
Now, you guys just got off the bus from the Creamery, correct? How was it?
Correct.
How was it?
It's always good. You know, I felt we needed a bonding experience.
Yes, this was Howard's
So
idea.
I set up a little ice cream social for the bus. So we went over and just like we did last year.
It would have never occurred to the rest of
And
us.
he does a lot of work setting it up. He says to Alex Klein, would you please set this up? And then he has set it up.
He just goes to his
It
person.
works. I mean, everybody's got to have a person.
Yeah.
I don't know where we'd be without Howard and his people.
All right, Dave, let's start with you. So when you take a look at your preseason checklist from every team around the Big Ten, what specifically sticks out about this year's Penn State squad?
I think quarterback's kind of the most obvious one. I think the receiver crew needs to be better than it was a year ago. The drop passes, to me, really plagued them. You think about how powerful they were offensively those first 4 games or so, and then how much the offense fell off. And then I'm just anxious to see the defense. I think it's going to be among the best, if not the best, in the Big Ten. It's certainly going to be in the discussion for it. So I'm just excited to go out there and kind of watch those guys fly around on that side of the ball.
Jerry, Ricky Ronnie's headed into his second season as offensive coordinator here in State College. What specifically are you looking for with this offense in 2019?
I think probably balance, the run-pass ratio. I think Ricky's done a really good job. This will be his second year, and I can't tell you, teams really improve from year 1 to year 2. Quarterbacks really improve from year 1 to year 2. I would tell you play callers, and this isn't saying that he didn't do a good job last year, but whatever level he called the plays on last year in his own eyes, he'll be much better this year. There's no harder job in college football than calling plays on Saturday, including being the head coach on Saturday. And so the pressure on Ricky Ronnie and all offensive coordinators around the country is tremendous, but they all get better the second year.
Howard, when you look at a guy like KJ Hamler, explosive playmaker, every time he touches the ball, he's got that big play potential, quote unquote. But what does Penn State need to do in 2019 here to make sure he continues to have the impact that he had last year?
Well, I think one of the things you'll see in Ricky Ronnie is you talk about being able to call plays more consistently. As Coach DiNardo says, into your second year, it's going to be about continuing to move him around throughout the formations, being creative in the way you get him the ball. But it's also going to be important for some other guys to be able to step up and really open things up so you can have more than just one guy to go to. And I think they'll be able to do that.
Dave, when you look at a guy like Yetur Gross-Matos to flip to the other side of the ball, he's, again, one of those guys that when he's in the game, he can make an impact every single time he's out there. But what makes him one of the best defenders in the country in your mind?
I mean, to me, it's his ability to get into the backfield. I think that's what separates him. You look at the sack totals and the tackle for loss totals, and your ability to get around your guy to create pressure. I just think that they, as a whole, really, that entire defense, particularly that, the front seven, has the ability to put quarterbacks on their heels, to get teams off balance, get them behind and down in distance, and I think he kind of personifies that.
Jerry, when you look at a guy like Micah Parsons, obviously it's not a secret of the impact that he has, and I'm sure you'll be watching him out here on your visit here in State College, but what kind of sticks out about his game and what continues to make him hopefully one of the best in the country?
My sense of it is he has to really learn the game. He's a tremendous athlete. I think what everybody says is he was the leading tackler but didn't start. And I think if that's true, which I think it is, that just tends you to lean towards he's just scratching the surface. He's got to learn the game. He probably has to learn his reads and all those things. But his athletic ability gives him a chance to be one of the best in the country, but he won't be one of the best in the country until he really learns the game. And I think that's true of a lot of young players.
Give me your take on Pat Fryermuth. Here's a sophomore that's coming in after an explosive freshman season last year, a tight end that hopefully will continue to make a difference for Penn State. But give me your take on Pat Fryermuth.
Well, I think when you talk about being able to be an inline blocker, when you talk about being able to extend outside of the formation as far as being detached, I think that's what he gives you. And it's just really another opportunity to open up underneath routes and also be able to run some corner routes and create some matchup problems for defenses. That's always going to be an important part as you continue to develop your players, as they continue to really learn and understand the game. As we've talked about this team on the bus, we know it's a young team, but it's an exciting team to watch and be prepared for, because they've gotten to a point, Penn State has, where I think this practice will tell us that they're able to reload. And yes, you may not know the names, but they've done a tremendous job over the last few years of recruiting at a very high level, and they're going to reload with players that can really help and impact this team.
Dave, would you agree with that? With obviously the young talent, the speed, Coach Franklin's kind of come out and said this is arguably probably one of the fastest teams that he's had here at Penn State. But where would you assess the entire state of the program at this point?
I think I look at them as having a 2-year window starting this year. Like, to me, in the next 2 years, they should be able to win the Big Ten, whether it happens this year or whether it happens next year, or certainly at least win their side of the league. They are really young, and so I do think, and that's particularly challenging when you have inexperience at some of the critical positions, which they do. But the recruiting, as we know, has been phenomenal. These guys follow recruiting much more closely than I do, because they do our recruiting, our 8-hour recruiting extravaganza every year. So they know better than I do, but I've followed enough to understand how well James has recruited, and so now does that come to fruition? And again, I look at it as being not necessarily this year, although it wouldn't shock me if it did, but over these next 2 years, this should be a championship-level team.
Let's stick there with recruiting. Jerry, I know you two obviously do a ton of recruiting, obviously, for the Big Ten, but when you do look at Big Ten coaches as a whole and programs as a whole, Penn State continues to be one of those top-tier teams on the recruiting trail. Why is that the case?
Well, I think the first thing is they have a great product to sell, and I think James and his staff do a great job selling it. I would agree and disagree a little bit with Dave. I think the fact that they could put themselves in position to win the Big Ten championship in the next 2 years is absolutely true. But big picture-wise, what I'd like to see today is how much talent they have compared to Ohio State. Ohio State for generations has had the most talent, regardless of who was their coach, and it's true right now. And I want to see what that gap is, if there is a gap. And to me, that's the biggest thing I'm going to try to get out of this practice, to see how close, and maybe they're already there, they are to Ohio State's talent.
How about from a facilities standpoint? I know you guys get to go and travel around the rest of the Big Ten and see what else is out there as programs continue to put unbelievable facilities together. But you walked in here, we're in the complex where players get to lounge, and you guys are doing a little pop-a-shot basketball game. But, how well of a job has Penn State done keeping up in that category?
To me, they've done an outstanding job, and it's a couple of reasons why. This is a university right now where the football facility is really landlocked, right? So they've done a great job of the academic center that I think came online maybe 2 years ago. Is unbelievable. It's second to none. I mean, the things that they can get done in there, the fact that they can bring students in, if they're in a group and they have students obviously that are not athletes, they can come in and work on projects together. To me, that's important. You see what they've done with the locker room. Everything around here is just first class, and they go the extra mile. To me, I like to look at really when you go into the snack area, it's not really – most people don't go that extra mile by actually hanging things up and making it look very presentable. That's one of the things they do here. And so from a facility standpoint, they continue, to me, to be one of the top facilities in all of the Big Ten when you look at what they have to offer for their student athletes.
Now, Dave, you already kind of touched on it. I'm going to present one last question for you guys, but I want everybody's input as far as what Penn State as a program and their championship habits, culture, motto this year, what do they need to do to end up back in Indianapolis in 2019?
Well, that's a good question, Mitch. I mean, to me, some of it's just going to be contingent on how good everyone else is. And, none of this happens in a vacuum. So how good is Michigan? How good's Ohio State? Does Michigan State bounce back? Some of those things are things you can't control. I think what was tough about Penn State last year was the close games they lost that, turned what was, I think, by most program standards, pretty good, a pretty good season that separated it from being a great season. The Ohio State game, the Michigan State game, it's a play or two here or there. And I think when you have an elite program like this, then the challenge becomes those 1 or 2 plays, or maybe it's 10 plays. You talk about that all the time, Howard. How many plays in a game the game kind of revolves around, and it just felt like at critical moments last year they didn't necessarily make those plays. So to me, for them to be a championship team, they're going to have to make those plays. Again, I'd stand by that 2-year window. That's not to say they can't do it this year, but I feel like they're kind of rebuilding a championship caliber team, and I think they're right on the verge. But I'm anxious to go out there and see, to Jerry's point, how they stack up.
Yeah, I would answer that question this way. Have outstanding quarterback play, be explosive on offense, which are kind of tied together, and I believe they could have the best defense in the conference. And I think if they do those 3 things, they could be an Indy.
Young players stepping up and not playing like young players, and that's kind of what happens when you look at some of the elite programs that are winning championships around the country. They lose guys to graduation, to the draft. Can you replace those guys? And can they play at a championship level? And I think that all starts at the top with Coach Franklin, what he talks about from the front of the room. We know what that message is, going out and being successful, making the plays, not hurting yourself as a team, and rallying the troops. And I think it goes back to also quarterback play is going to be so important. You got to be able to score points. I think the number is somewhere around 39 points you need to be able to score to win the national title. Because, yeah, you get defense to get there, but your offense is what's going to win it once you get into that 14 playoff. So quarterback play is going to be huge. Finding that dominant running back, which I think they have an unbelievable running back room, but finding that guy as well, and just being able to take care of the football.
Dave, Jerry, Howard, appreciate you guys joining us on this special edition of the Unrivaled Podcast, and enjoy the rest of your time at State College, all right?
I'm going to dominate these guys in popping shots.
Yeah, let's do it.
Just to
Gotta
be
get it
sure.
done.
Who's going first? Let's do the batting order.
It doesn't matter. I can go first.
Okay, I'll go last because
on.
I'm the oldest.
All right, we'll see you next time on the Unrivaled Podcast.
Thanks, man.
Unrivaled, the official podcast of Penn State football.